I'm Summer Morris, CPA, ex-corporate accounting girl and health coach turned CEO of a multi-six-figure business while helping others build financial security, healthier habits, and a better quality of life. It wasn't that long ago I lacked the confidence, the right plan, and time to focus on growing my small but mighty business, while also having time for healthy activities I wanted to pursue away from my desk. Fast forward past many failures and lessons learned, and you'll see the healthier business and lifestyle I have today. One that changes lives while giving me more freedom than I ever thought possible. I created the Fit to Endure podcast to share simple, actionable, step-by-step strategies to help you do the same. So if you're looking to feel better, live a healthier life without blowing your budget, start a side hustle, or train for your next race, this show will help you make an impact and achieve your goals without creating the overwhelm and burnout that makes you want to quit. You ready? Let's get started. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of the Fit to Endure podcast. I'm glad you're here. How are you? I'm doing really well. Over the past weekend, I ran my first running race as it was 7 weeks of an anniversary from my collarbone surgery. So celebrating with a running race and got the green light from the surgeon. He said, yes, you can do the race. Just listen to your body. Yes, you can wear the pack with the water, hydration, and food and all the other things in my backpack, as long as it was in no more than 10 pounds. Okay, so green light for the run race. Yes, you can wear your pack. And I was stoked. And I was just so thankful. My goals for the race driving there was first that I get there on time, because the logistics of parking were a little trickier for this race than I usually do. It was a trail run and the parking was just a little more remote than other ones. So the goal of first just showing up on time to start the race. I know, sounds so simple, right? The second goal was finishing the race. Can I just get to the finish line? And mind you, this goal was fair given that I was just back into racing, had the pack on with all the things, wanted to make it heavier, even though this was a smaller race than I usually do. This one was a 8-kilometer, just shy of 5 miles. So much smaller than I usually would run, but I just wanted to give myself, a chance to kind of shake off the rust, so to speak, since it had been about 2 months since I had done a race, make sure the body feels good with the pack on, that I'm comfortable having those people around. Hopefully they don't bump my shoulder and create that nervousness that can come along post-surgery, and just really feeling this opportunity for this race. As I was running, I was having so much gratitude for everything that got me here. All the people that helped me with the surgery, from the doctors to the medical staff to my amazing boyfriend for cleaning myself up when I couldn't even get myself out of bed, at the early start of this injury, just all those things. And so showing up to this race and meeting a bunch of really cool people, the event hosts, the volunteers, other race participants, it was just a beautiful experience and so, so grateful to be there. And during the race, I found myself in some of those steeper pitches. The first 3 miles were much deeper than I actually thought it would be. I looked at the elevation, but I failed on a certain part of the math and went, oh yeah, that's not too much elevation. But just given the short distance and the elevation, it was a little steeper than I was anticipating. But that's okay. All the fun things, right? And so I just thought, well, instead of trying to run the full race, do some cardio hiking up those steeper pitches and then catch up on the way down. And so in those opportunities of cardio hike, it made me think about a handful of people that reached out to me in the week before this race, and through their unsolicited comments, I didn't ask them. They just knew that I was going to be running on this particular day, that they sent me emails and other messages, social media messages. I don't think you should do this. This is a bad idea. It's too soon. You should let your body rest. I can't believe you're racing. This doesn't seem like it's the right thing for your body. All those things. And mind you, like I said, the surgeon said, yes, you're healing beautifully. Go enjoy the race. Go have fun. Keep the water pack under 10 pounds as your body's getting used to things. And you can lift your arms overhead. Just be careful with your left arm, where the injury side is. Just don't lift more than a pound overhead, and just focus on all those things. But I just had those thoughts of those people saying, I don't think you should do this. This sounds like a bad idea. You should be healing. You should be staying home resting. What it made me think of in those steep parts, and of course, then I would flesh it out on the downhill run. But in those steeper parts when I was doing the cardio hike, it just made me think about a while back, a few years ago, when somebody mentioned to me, and I can't remember who, I'm sorry, I can't give you credit for this, but they told me in so many words, probably fewer than I use, that when somebody gives unsolicited advice and says, I think this is what you should do, when you're not asking them, that it can leave the impression that they know better than you, and therefore they need to guide you on what to do. And so as I was getting these unsolicited comments of advice, it just made me think about that person that gave me that comment, that quote of, when somebody gives you unsolicited advice on what you should do with your life, with your things, that how it can leave that impression of they somehow feel like I can't take care of myself, and so therefore they should lead me in the direction that I should be going. For them, I say, hey, thank you for your kindness. Thank you for demonstrating love in the way that you want to demonstrate it. And by the way, here's an image of me and my plaque for getting first place in my age group of 40 to 49. So yes, I literally won the race that I was in for the age group, not for overall, but for the age group of women in 40 to 49 category. I won. And so it was just a bit of that little selfish pleasure of shooting back those people and saying, hey, thanks for letting me know how you feel about me in the race. But if I'd followed your advice, I wouldn't have had an amazing experience with all those people that I was running with and meeting with on the course and off the course, and then receiving this achievement. So just putting that out there, because today we are talking about creating your first household food budget. And money is really interesting, or at least I think money is really interesting, because whether we want to or not, we all have a relationship with money. And we've experienced how other people around us interact with money, whether they overspend or underspend. Maybe they hoard money and set it aside. Maybe they worry about money. Whatever it is, we all have a relationship with money. And what I find when working with individuals in my money coaching sessions or in couple sessions, I did do some groups, but I find that the best ones are in the individual or the couple sessions. But what I would find in those money conversations about creating that first budget, and here we're just talking about the food budget, is that we all come in with certain thoughts and beliefs and histories and seeing how other people interact with this stuff called food and money, and how easily it can be for us to start to project our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings on what other people should do with their money and their food budget based on our experiences. So yes, I know a lot of words, but what I'm just trying to set the stage here for is that as we get into creating this first household food budget, there will be opportunities for people to project their thoughts and beliefs on what they think you should do. And if they're unsolicited and it makes you feel like, they don't believe I can do this on my own, that I can make my own strong decisions, just know you're having a human experience, an imperfect human experience with other imperfect humans. And I'm certain that they were just trying to help, not harm, and just go with it. You can just allow whatever their suggestions are just to roll off and move forward with what works best for you. All right, there's my rant on racing and opinions. Let's get into first creating the household food budget. And when I say household food budget, this could be for solo, single people. This could be for couples, for families, for blended families. It could be for multi-generational groups of people that live under one roof. Whatever it is, what I want to imagine is just looking at of the people under this roof or whatever it is that are bringing in money and contributing to our food budget, what that can perhaps look like as a way of supporting us both in our eating experiences and our overall life goals. All right. So speaking on telling people what to do and telling people what they shouldn't do, all those things, we're here to talk about creating your first household budget. And that conversation of creating your first household budget, or at least the string of conversations that can come up in creating your first household budget, can end up bringing forth some of those comments, those unsolicited comments of this is what I think you should do with the budget. This is what I think you shouldn't do with the budget. And just be mindful that if you're the one handing out that unsolicited advice during these food budget conversations, you might be informing those people and letting them know that you think that your thoughts or your actions are better than what they can do. And why not give them an opportunity just to experience their life, their budget, and course correct as needed. And during setting up the household food budget or reviewing it, because it's really important to monitor this throughout the process, we're not just going to write down a budget, put it in a drawer and go away. We're going to draft it and then refine it over and over again and communicate on this. That if somebody provides that unsolicited advice on what they think should happen or should not happen, it could just be their gentle way of letting them know that you care and that this is what they think you should do, and that's okay. You don't have to take their advice. You can just say, hey, thanks for sharing your opinion and move on. So this topic came about because I recently finished a book that I loved, by the way, and I plan to have the author on really soon for a bit of Q&A for her book. The book is called How Low Can You Go? Nutritious Meals from $30 per Week by Kimberly Gillan. Yes, I'm looking forward to meeting Kimberly Gillan really soon, at least in Zoom virtually, because I know that there have been times in my past when I was making less money or just really focused on budgeting myself. Because I know, honestly, looking at my food budget, which I'd been doing with my partner for the past couple months now, and we're going to be sitting down literally tonight after I finish recording this to revise our food budget because it's gone a little off course, as can happen because as we start to interact with more people, and like I mentioned with the history and relationship with food and with money, that now we're trying to find a way of coexisting with that budget. You know, it's so easy to create a budget for ourselves and say, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is what we're not going to do, and be able to navigate and course correct in that realm. But once we start to bring in more people and they have their own thoughts and experiences and power in the pocketbook and in the budget, it's important to really be able to communicate in an open, honest, healthy way and find those comfortable mediums. So getting back to the budget, I know that many years ago, I was much more strict with my budget with food. Why? Because I had to, because my money was so much tighter. And that now just looking at it, reflecting on it, that as I've made some more money, I've kind of loosened up that food budget experience. You know, before it'd be, okay, this is how much money I have to the grocery store. And then really being mindful of how much those price tags were, doing some math, maybe a calculator. These days, having the calculator on your phone to do the math and really calculating up how much money am I spending? Whereas in today's society, it can be so easy just to pop the food items in the basket or in the cart, in the trolley, as Kimberly Gillan says in her book. And then you just go to the checkout, everything's swiped electronically, you swipe your plastic card, and you're on your way. There could be a lot smaller relationship of how much these things are costing me in my food budget and in my overall money plan. So yeah, super excited to have Kimberly on soon. And really grateful for the comments she had in the book that reminded me of, oh, why did I stop doing this thing or that thing? And reintroducing those items back into my lifestyle and into my food budget. All right, let's dive into today's crucial topic that affects many of us, establishing and communicating our first household food budget. You can find the show notes for today's episode, including a downloadable handout for creating your first food budget at summermorris.com/22. That's summermorris.com/ and the number 22. All right. Step 1, determining your food budget allocation. Let's start with the basics. How to determine how much your take-home pay should be allocated to your food budget. The general rule of thumb is to spend about 10 to 15% of your total income on food. However, this can vary depending on your financial situation and goals. And when I'm looking at that 10 to 15%, I'm actually going to be looking at the gross amount, 10 to 15% of your gross pay. Why? Because in later budget conversations, I'm going to be talking about savings and retirement and how you can do that automatically out of your paycheck. And so as you can think, the higher we set up our retirement savings or some other allocated savings plan in our payroll and those direct deposits, it's going to squeeze that net paycheck amount. So with our general rule of thumb, we're looking at the gross amount of our pay. And in this case, it's 10 to 15% of our gross pay is going toward our food budget. And of course, this can vary depending on our financial situation and goals. To get started, we're going to calculate your monthly income. This includes all sources of income you have access to on a regular basis. Now, if you need some help calculating your monthly income because you get paid every other week or every week, I'll have that information in the show notes and in today's handout at summermorris.com/22. So I'll save some of the math here in our podcast and put it out in our episode number 22's handout. Okay, so calculating your monthly income. Next, we want to subtract our fixed expenses. This includes rent, mortgage, utilities, our transportation expenses. Do we have a car payment, auto insurance, the fuel, all that stuff? And then any other expenses that we are obligated to pay. After that, we're going to dedicate a percentage to savings. Now, it's impossible to have a savings plan. We can aim for about 10 to 20% of our income, if possible, to savings. If you're like, there's no way I don't save anything, then what you're going to do is you're going to save 1%. Yes, 1% of your monthly income going to savings. We're going to get you something. You deserve something. Then we see what's left. The remaining amount is your discretionary income, from which you'll allocate 10 to 15% for food. Now, if you just ran through the math and you're like, oh my gosh, I just did everything you said. I calculated my monthly income. I subtracted my expenses. I subtracted the other things I've already promised to pay, those Netflix subscriptions, all those other things. And I've set aside at least 1% of my pay for savings, and there's nothing left. All right, then we're going to do this. Then you're going to calculate 10 to 15% for food, and then look at the other effects, okay? So we're just going to find a few different ways that we can look at how to create your first household food budget. The first option is calculating the monthly income, subtracting our fixed expenses like the rent, mortgage, utilities, transportation, other expenses we are obliged or responsible to pay for. Maybe we have student loan payments, a car payment. We're going to look to save at least 1% of our monthly income to savings, at least 1%. We would like to aim for 10 to 20% of our income if possible. But if that's a no way, not happening right now, not with all this credit card debt stuff, aim for 1%, okay? And then you'll see what's left. The remaining amount is your discretionary income, which you'll allocate about 10 to 15% for food. So if we have a large salary and we're able to take that monthly income, subtract out the rent, mortgage, utilities, and then we've already set aside 10 to 20% in our savings plan, if we're not doing that, at least 1% in saving something for yourself. And then we see what's left. And of what's left from that larger salary, we're going to allocate 10 to 15% for food. But if we don't have a large salary, or we feel that we don't have a large salary, especially if we live in an expensive area like California, well, here's an example for you on what to do. We're not going to look at 10 to 15% of our bottom what's left. We're going to take our 10 to 15% from the top, okay? So here's an example. As of August 2024, ZipRecruiter says the average salary in California is $62,038 per year, but that salary can vary widely depending on factors like age, location, the job experience, college education. But if we take the average salary of $62,038 and we divide it by 12 months, we get $5,170. Of that $5,170, if we multiply it by 10%, we get $517. If we take that $5,170 and multiply it by 15%, we get $775. What this means is that if we have the average salary of $62,038, the desired food budget range is between $517 and $775. And this is for one salary. If you have more than one salary, if you have two salaries in your household or more, then you can grab all those salaries together and then do the math for that 10% and 15% to see what your budget range is for your household's food budget. Okay. So going back to our single person who's making $62,038 per year, the average food budget recommended is between $517 and $775. Okay, so between $517 and $775. And that can ebb and flow. Maybe in the summertime, you find that the produce is a lot less expensive, so you're more on that $5.17 side. Whereas in the winter, they're shipping more produce in, and so that cost is higher, or whatever it is. So just going for that range, and don't always aim for the top number of $7.75. I know it's so easy to do. We want to find something in between, in the middle if possible. Next, let's talk about how much your food budget should be spent on groceries versus takeout. Ideally, you want to allocate 80% of your food budget to grocery store purchases and 20% to dining out. Groceries are generally cheaper and offer more nutritious options. So to use the high number of our food budget number, that $775 number, as an example, we would ideally break up our $775 food budget as $620 for groceries for the month and $155 in eating out for the month. Now, if you're like me and you're thinking $155 for eating out for the month, that's like 2 regular meals at a restaurant, where you have the tip and that back of restaurant charge and all those things. It can feel like only a couple meals like that, especially if maybe you treat a friend or so with the restaurant, or maybe 4 meals at a basic restaurant. That's right. It could be your $155 might get you 10 meals at your favorite fast food joint, whatever it is. But looking at that $775 food budget, if 80% is going to groceries, $620, and that includes wine and beer, that's not a separate budget. That's in there too, if you're drinking those things. And $155 is the eating out. All right. If you're like, I don't know how this is going to happen, we're going to figure it out because we want to become financially fit. This is what it's about. We're going to get our nutrition in our body. We're going to get our budget realigned so that all this effort we're putting into working and making money is supporting us, not just in our life today, but in the future as well. Because as one of my older neighbors told me years and years ago, you want to struggle when you're young. Don't struggle when you're old like me, he said in his late 60s and trying to figure out how he was going to make his mortgage and get groceries. You don't want to struggle when you're older. So find the way now in your younger years to make this work so that you're able to set aside the money and not struggle so much in those older years. I know, so much math, but that's why it's in the handout you can find at summermorris.com/22. Hidden costs of eating out. Menu prices. Takeout tends to be more expensive up front. Back of restaurant fees. I don't know if you have these where you are, but I'm seeing it all over the place on menus here. And they're legal, they're allowed, as long as it's disclosed on the menu that each check might include a $4 back of house fee, or each bill will include a 4% or 5% fee to help us, the restaurant, cover the cost for the employees' increased wages or sick time, all those things. We're going to have our tip. I've noticed a lot of the tips when they bring over the electronic pad, it'll say the requested tip is 15%, 18%, 20%, even 25%. I know as a kid, it seemed like the average tip was 10% and a big tip was 15%. I know, 49%. I know it's not that way these days, but it's just interesting to notice the requested tip these days is ranging between 15% and 25%. And then before we get to that tip, we have the sales tax. So the sales tax where I am is 9.25% in Santa Rosa, California. So all the state, county, local sales taxes all combined equals 9.25%. So when I go to eat out, for example, if I just go on my own solo and eat out, I have the price of whatever the plate is. If I'm ordering a beverage other than tap water, there's going to be a price for that. And then we have our back of restaurant fee or back of house fee. From there, we're going to get our sales tax calculation. So 9.25% on everything I ordered, somewhere between that suggested 15 to 25%, maybe more if you're feeling extra generous or a little boozy. And you do your math there. And what is it really? Maybe you went out for a $20 plate. How much did it really cost you at the end? Interesting to notice. And if you're going out to eat in a location that requires you to pay for parking, like when I go to downtown Santa Rosa on a day other than Sunday, you'll want to factor that into your eating cost too. Another hidden cost of eating out, at least for me personally, is food waste. I find the more I go and eat out, even if I'm invited out by somebody else, the more I'm not eating the food I've already purchased in the refrigerator or pantry. So then by going out to eat, that food is getting older and less desirable, and I end up having more get spoiled and end up in the composter than in my belly as I originally planned. All right, now let's talk about how to start the conversation with others in your household to build the food budget together. First, we want to schedule time in our calendar, paper calendar, Post-it note, Google Calendar, whatever it is, for our first budget meeting conversation. Find a day and time that works for everyone so that no one's caught off guard or surprised when it's time to discuss this stuff. Next, approach during a calm moment. Whatever you're doing, if you find that, okay, we're going to have the meeting right when I get off work or after school, whatever it is, can you allow a little bit of time, maybe even 3 or 5 minutes, just to transition from whatever you were doing before the budget meeting to the meeting? Allow any stresses, any excitement, any high energy, or even frustrations that you had before a budget meeting, just to subside a little bit so that we don't bring that into what could already be a semi-anxious experience, okay? We want to give everyone an opportunity to relax. Perhaps we're having this after a meal or during our normal family meeting. And then during the budget conversation, share the benefits, explain how budgeting can lead to more savings, less stress, and healthier eating options for all of us. Lastly, come prepared. Have a computer with you so you can log online to your online banking, online credit card accounts, all those things, or even have them printed, have those printed bank statements and credit card statements ahead of time. That way you can look collectively at how much money you've been spending on different food opportunities, whether it's at restaurants or takeout, grocery stores, the big box stores like Costco, and then have a piece of paper and pen or even a calculator, even the calculator on your phone will do, and just look at roughly how much you've been spending over the past month or over the past 3 months, and then doing an average of the 3 months by dividing by 3. That's when usually I find there's a big, wow, I can't believe we're spending that much conversation. And that big wow can be the spark that motivates the whole family, the whole household to find a better option than what's happening right now. I also like to look at not just what we're taking away, like, okay, wow, that number's big, let's make it smaller, but what are we also adding to? For example, let's say you run through the family food budget and you find over the past 3 months, on average, you're spending $1,200 per month. Now, I know for some folks, they could say, that's crazy. Who's spending that much? Well, trust me, after providing money coaching services to individuals and families for several years now, when we go through where the money is going conversation, that's when there's a bit of a sobering effect because we see those numbers of where the money is going, and it's usually a huge restaurant budget, especially when we look at the restaurant budget in comparison to the grocery budget. And a lot of the comments I hear is, well, we're so busy. All we have time for is to rush home and then go to the restaurant. We don't have time to shop for the food and prep the food and cook the food. That's way too much time. We don't have that. That's so much stress. We're just going to spend a ton on restaurants and figure it out after the fact. Don't worry. I get it. I've heard that a lot. We're not going to change everything overnight today in this one episode. That's why there's going to be a layering effect. I can't wait to show you what's in episode 23 after this one. But just remember that as we look at this household food budget and we look to try to shrink it, it's not just focusing on what we're taking away from that food budget, but what are we going to be able to add to in our life to help improve the quality of our life, improve our relationships with one another. For example, that $1,200 per month average for the groceries, for all the takeout, all those foodie things. If we step back and say, okay, what if we changed our $1,200 per month food budget to $900? What could we use that extra $300 per month for as a family in celebration of meeting our food budget goal? What could we do with that $300? Could we set aside that $300 and pay down some of the credit card debt that's been stressing us out? Could we set aside $300 for a separate savings account and watch it grow? Do special family vacations or other outings or get the new something we've all been talking about wanting at the holidays? Let's figure it out. What is a way that we could celebrate creating this household budget and following through with it so that we can meet the budget and these other goals that we want to have for individuals, for households, all of it. Okay. Finding that extra $300 can be really simple as we look around at where the money is going and have the healthy conversations of what do we want to do together to overcome this. And like I started with earlier, through all those words that you've listened to, as we go through this process, there will be opportunities for people to say, we should do this, we should do that based on their personal experiences or what they've learned from others. And if this is a household budget, if this is more than one person budget, this isn't going to be we're just going to do it this one person's way. It needs to be a collective. Okay, we all need to pitch in with our thoughts, our beliefs, our direction on where we want to go, and then find the compromise in all of that. Okay, as we do that though, and we build out this draft for our budget, either on paper and pen or using a spreadsheet like Excel or Google Sheets, whatever works for you, sometimes we're going to find some resistance. It's normal. It's healthy. It's totally normal. It's a human experience. So what do we do when there's resistance? Well, we're going to start by listening and compromising. We may need to adjust the plan slightly to accommodate everybody's needs and preferences. This is where I like to think of the WIIFM. What's in it for me? WIIFM. What's in it for me? So as you go through this process and you find some resistance with someone, just think, what's in it for me from their perspective? And what is a way that if it's like, okay, we're shrinking the $1,200 budget down to $900 and we have that $300, how can you sell them on the what's in it for me that they're going to benefit both from the $900 budget and that $300, whatever it is, that the rest of the money is going toward? Okay. Finding that listening opportunity and compromising. Next, if it's just too much resistance, too much frustration, it's like, this feels way more business than pleasure, I don't want any of this, well, then separate budgets may be necessary. Yes, separate budgets for the food may be necessary, and it's totally okay. Trust me, it's totally okay. If agreements can't be reached, consider keeping your food budget separate. And I find this very often for those that in a couple situation where one has a habit of eating out all the time for lunch and all those things, and the other one is more frugal. Maybe one person grew up in a family where eating out was common, and the other person, there was more frugality. There was more, you come home, you make your food, you cook the pot of meal, and there's extra. So you put some in the freezer and cycle it through the refrigerator to eat, in those busier days of the week. Whatever it is, if an agreement can't be reached on the budget, perhaps consider having separate budgets. And so whether it's that person loves to eat out, if they have their separate budget, they can go and spend as much as they want because it's their budget. And then the frugal person might be the one that cuts their budget in half or however it is, and then has that separate money set aside for whatever it is they want to do with. I also find separate budgets are helpful for those where one person uses a big portion of the food budget for, say, meat and dairy items, maybe more alcohol, like they're a wine connoisseur, so the big part of their budget is wine. Whereas the other person's like, I'm not really into those things. I'm more plant-based and I'm fine with my sparkly tea. And so there could be this big lopsided food budget, which is fine. We can have one person that's a bigger spend on food budget and one that's smaller. And those two could average each other out at the grocery store. But if that team budget or that household budget is creating a lot of friction and resistance, then maybe consider having two separate budgets and see how that goes. All right. Let's talk about some tips for finding the best deals in the grocery store. Now, back when I want to say 19, it could have been 18, but I think it was 19, I worked at a grocery store called Safeway. And back then, I had no idea what a value it would be for me now to have worked at the grocery store Safeway. Even when I was only making minimum wage, except on Sundays when we got time and a half because it was union, which I thought was killer, that working at the grocery store taught me a lot of things, and I want to teach you some here. So the first one is shopping sales and using coupons. So the Safeway grocery store I worked at, and it seems like the local ones, their ads for their sales came out on Wednesday. So I knew that I can grab that ad and purchase that stuff till the following Tuesday, knowing that the next Wednesday, the next ad's coming out. And so each Wednesday while working there, I would grab the paper and I would just flip through it and see what the sales are. And then just kind of like a bit of a game, kind of like the budgeting game. What can I make with these things that are on sale? Okay, so planning the meal around what's on sale. It was super fun to do. Next, buy in bulk. So buying things like grains like white rice, brown rice, beans, frozen vegetables. When you buy stuff in bulk, it's often cheaper when you can get it in those larger quantities. Next, opt for store brands. Now, other than Safeway, one of my favorite grocery stores to shop at locally is Whole Foods. Now, I know some people like Dave Ramsey call it whole paycheck, but for me, I love Whole Foods grocery because of their 365 store brand. Yes, on occasion, I'll get some expensive item there, but overall, I'm shopping the Whole Foods 365 brands because they're just as good as the name brand, but a lot less. So looking at that 365 brand, especially like for rolled oats or, some of those bulk grains, all those fun things, getting the Whole Foods store brand is fantastic. Another thing that's pretty interesting is that at Whole Foods, when I look at their sales, going back to tip number 1, sales, is that when I look at the sales at Whole Foods for certain things like cereal, there's a couple cereals that are my favorite. If I want to treat myself to a box of prepared cereal, that I can often find that the sale for that cereal at Whole Foods is much less expensive than it would be at the standard Safeway type grocery store. And when certain foods are not on sale at Whole Foods, they're still less expensive than at that what's considered lesser cost grocery store like Safeway. So I can think of a couple cereals where whether it's just the standard today's price, it's still less at Whole Foods than it is at Safeway. And then if it's on sale at Whole Foods, bonus, even better. So, okay. Tip number 4 on finding great deals at the grocery store, seasonal produce. Fruits and vegetables are cheaper and fresher when they're in season. And so don't forget to also check out those farmers markets if you have a nearby. But at the grocery store, the seasonal produce is your friend. Getting back to my Safeway experience when I was about 19, when I worked there, there was a man in the produce, and back then they had a full-time person in produce. It was so killer. And his name was Patrick, but I called him Pat. And Pat was like my produce hero because I can go in there and I could walk by as I swept the big push broom and I can see a tag for this thing on sale or that thing on sale. And I would have no idea how to prepare whatever this thing was, whether it was a fruit or a vegetable or a root, all those things. And I can ask Pat, how do I prepare this? And he would, with great kindness, say, okay, this is what you do. Here are the steps. You want to cook it at this temperature, cut it in this way, all these things. And so not only was I buying seasonal produce at this lesser cost because they were grown closer from that seasonality, but I was also getting an experience to try new foods, new flavors, because that person in produce, Mr. Pat, was able to guide me on how to prepare the foods that I was purchasing so I can expand my shopping list to just those basic carrots, potatoes, broccoli sort of things. So super fun. Seasonal produce. It's a great way to get some less cost foods and also expand your taste buds. Give it a try. The next one is using loyalty programs. So many stores offer discounts and points through loyalty programs. For example, the Safeway store, when I put in my phone number, it has my membership already dialed in. If I go to Whole Foods, because Whole Foods is now owned by Amazon and I have an Amazon account, I could put my Amazon phone number, the connected phone number in there to get those discounts. So look for the ways you're getting the discounts. And don't forget to put the phone number or whatever the code is in to get the loyalty, because you might have been shopping in your head at all those sale prices based on the tag. And if for whatever reason you get distracted and forget to put that loyalty program code in, like your phone number, you're going to miss out on all those really big sales. Next, cost-effective plant-based options. Transition to more plant-based foods can save you money and boost your health. Plant-based foods like lentils, beans, rice, and vegetables are typically less expensive than meat, fish, and dairy. Plus, they're packed with nutrients and are versatile in recipes. When I was working at Safeway, for example, and Mr. Patton Produce would help me with, this is how you prepare this thing or that thing. What I realized, since I made so little money back then, especially compared to my rent, that if I purchased the foods that were not related to animals, not the meat, the fish, or the dairy, my money went a lot farther. So beans and rice and veggies and fruits, they might not sound as sexy as some of those things like the Got Beef commercial or what have you, but my money went so much farther. And I had a very healthy plate of food at the end of the day as well. So if you find that your money isn't stretching as far as you want at the grocery store, maybe swapping out some of those meat, fish, and dairy options for the beans, the rice, the lentils, the veggies, you might find that you're able to fill up faster or longer on a smaller budget. As we wrap up this segment of the podcast, here are 9 common grocery store foods in the U.S. that are healthy, inexpensive, and easy to cook. The first is rice. Rice is versatile, and if you choose brown rice, it's even richer in fiber. White rice, I love white rice. I think it's great the meal the night before a long run. I can have it for breakfast if I want to, just stir in a little bit of oat milk and some cinnamon and raisins to make kind of like a modified rice pudding. You can whip up a stir-fried with leftover rice really easy. It goes great with the lentils, the beans. If you're a meat eater, you can toss in some chicken or whatever it is. It's very versatile. But if you find that rice is one of those things that you end up not cooking because you need to put it on the pot and wait and it takes too long, I recommend considering a rice cooker. Your first household food budget might include setting aside, say, $20, $25 for the first month to purchase a rice cooker. And what's really rad about the rice cooker is that after you put in your rice and the water, I use 1 part rice to 2 parts water. And before I put that in my little tiny rice cooker that I got from Walmart for maybe $15, I rub a little coconut oil or some sort of oil on the bottom just so it doesn't burn, a little pinch of salt and pepper, and then I stir it up with my finger, put the lid on, turn it on, and then I can go and shower or do whatever it is. So if you find that you're coming home and you're just coming home from work or from a workout and you're hungry, you can quickly say, okay, I'm going to have a little snack while I put the rice in the cooker and then go shower. And by the time you come back, the rice is ready. You can warm it up with all the other things that you've set up. The next item on the common grocery store food list that's healthy, inexpensive, and easy to cook, black beans. Yes, great for protein and budget friendly. Next one, frozen vegetables. Convenient and nutritious. What's really cool with frozen vegetables is that vegetables are usually prepared frozen at the time of their peak nutrition. So it makes it much easier to get those healthy veggies out of the freezer. You can even toss them into your rice, like frozen peas, toss them in that rice cooker before you head off to shower or do whatever you're going to do and have them ready in with the rice. The next one, oats. Oats are perfect for breakfast and they're cost effective. You can cook the oats. I even use that little rice cooker I mentioned from Walmart. I get their quick cooking steel cut oats from Costco, huge bag of it. And I prepare the oats in that rice cooker too. Of course, separate from the rice, but in the cooker too. Sweet potatoes are great. They're inexpensive, nutritious, easy to prepare. Bananas, affordable, ideal snack. They're in their own packaging. You can take them with you. Canned tomatoes are great for sauces and soups. I like to open a can of tomatoes, put it in a pot, add some water, and then maybe grab some of those frozen vegetables I just mentioned, put those in, warm up the water, simmer, the rice is cooking, and then you can have this along with some sort of protein. Then we have carrots, inexpensive and can be used in a variety of dishes. Now, carrots, by the way, are usually cheaper fresh instead of frozen. So just know that most veggies are less expensive when you get them in the freezer. However, carrots are usually less expensive when fresh. And then spinach. Spinach, you can purchase it fresh or frozen. It's great for salads, for cooking. I love to blend fresh spinach into my morning smoothie. The big tip there is that with that morning smoothie, if it has spinach in it, drink it while it's cold. Because once that smoothie starts to warm up, you get the essence of fresh spinach in, and it might not be quite what you're looking for. All right. Well, my friends, thank you for tuning in to this episode, number 22 of the Fit to Endure podcast. I hope you found these tips helpful for establishing and communicating your first household food budget. Remember, budgeting is a journey, and teamwork makes it easier and more enjoyable. If you have any questions or topics you'd like to cover, reach out to us at podcast@summermorris.com. Until next time, stay healthy, financially fit, and give your first household food budget a try. Bye-bye for now. Namaste.